How do I appeal to a different market? How do I make sure that women understand these jobs are out here? How do I think of communities of color and how they perceive or don't perceive access to these jobs?
You are listening to CEO Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.
Welcome to this episode of CEO Perspectives, a signature series by the Conference Board. CEO Perspectives are conversations that take an objective, nonpartisan look at a range of subjects that matter most to business leaders. I'm Steve Odland, the CEO of the Conference Board and the host of this podcast series. And in today's conversation, we're going to discuss how one company is focusing on advancing workforce training and what business leaders need to keep top of mind about that. Joining me today is David Etzwiler, the CEO of the Siemens Foundation. David, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be with you.
So, David, I think everybody knows Siemens. It's a global conglomerate. It does automation, technology, energy, financial services. It's an amazing company, and they've established the Siemens Foundation, which you run. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the foundation, what it is, and what it does.
Yeah, happy to do that, Steve. And you're right. It's an incredible company with its arms and legs in a lot of different places that are vital, particularly these days. But the Siemens Foundation focuses on economic opportunity and equity, and we do that by driving workforce development, health equity, and clean economy jobs. And maybe I'll just spend a minute and talk about how we got there. We really sat down a number of years ago when we set our course and our strategy and looked to figure out where we could get the highest return on investment for society, given the assets that we have to contribute, right? So we looked at the big needs of the day. We looked at income and wealth disparities. We looked at the need for a trained workforce in this country to drive our economic needs and the impact it was having on democratic institutions. We looked at the assets of the company, so the German heritage and the tremendous culture and knowledge around work-based learning and apprenticeships in particular. And we looked at the assets of the foundation, really looking at youth and technical education, which the foundation had been in a number of different places. And we landed in that place of really driving workforce development in these STEM technical fields, these jobs that require more than a high school degree, less than a college degree, and strong technical skills.
Yeah, so this is a great example. I mean, we're going to talk about the work of the foundation, but for those people who are listening, you might want to think about, how do you do a strategy in a foundation, the importance of companies to have foundations or similar activities that address the community needs, because every company has a series of constituents, their customers, of course, their employees, their owners, but the community is so important, and so Siemens, this is a model really that others could follow, and you don't have to do it exactly the same way, but I think it's just really helpful to listen to how Siemens thought through this and selected these areas of focus.
Yeah, and I'll just say it continues to be the model. I mean, every board meeting we start with about a 30-second overview, gets us all on the same page, helps us understand what we're driving, what we're delivering on, where we can do better.
Yeah. So let's go through each one. Advancing workforce training. Now, that seems like something that the company itself would do. It doesn't sound like, a foundation activity. How did you decide what the company was going to do and what the foundation was going to do?
Well, I mean, a couple quick answers that are, of course, obvious to you and others. The first one is the IRS has some pretty clear determinations there, right, about what we can do. We cannot provide a direct benefit to the company. In fact, that would be contrary to our philanthropic goals anyway. We're here to use these dollars to build society and as I said, get the highest return on investment for all of that. Yeah. There's no doubt that we have drawn heavily on the knowledge and the networks that the company has, right? I mean, when I first came in, we had a couple of people on the board of directors who were apprentices themselves in Germany, right? They started out as apprentices. That gives you tremendous passion and knowledge. Those are speakers readily available, and they know how it's done. But this is the model that our competitors use. This is the model that we use, and candidly, it's one that we're pretty passionate. When it comes to apprenticeships and work-based learning, that we think the U.S. really can adopt and benefit from.
So it was a core competence of the company. And so as you started to think about how you can make a benefit in the community, it was, well, let's share this core competence and advance workforce training in the community. So what exactly is, in how you're doing it, what exactly is workforce training and how do you do that?
Yeah. So again, go back to within workforce training, right? One of the things we recognize early is a lot of folks are in that space, and you got to be clear about what you're driving and where your opportunities are. So we're very narrowly focused within workforce training. Again, those jobs that require more than a high school degree, less than a college degree, and strong technical skills. Why? Because we know what those jobs pay. It's north of $50,000 as a starting wage. They come with very little debt. These are a floor to a career, not a ceiling to a career. They're really an opportunity to advance to the middle class and beyond. So that's, that workforce training piece, that's really why we got into it. And we stayed in the areas that we know, right? We stayed in areas like manufacturing, within healthcare, a number of those jobs. Because we have the core competency in all of that. And then within the strategy, we again really focused not finding new models, right? There are a lot of smart people out there, a lot of smart institutions, but what are the proven models that are out there that we can accelerate, capture, and scale with our partners?
Yeah.
And our partners are the likes of National Governors Association, Center for Best Practices, which has done an exceptional job of capturing, providing technical expertise. National League of Cities, same model. New America, creating the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, which JP Morgan Chase Foundation, Carnegie, Lumina, Casey, and a number of others are our partners in. So that's really has been a big piece of this, is to figure out, again, we're not reinventing the wheel. Those wheels are out there. Let's find the right ones and get them out.
So this is all about working through other 501c3s, not-for-profits, and providing training and your own, the expertise from Siemens in how to prepare people, give them the skills in order to engage in work that will be meaningful to them, but also will be very productive and give them a path to the middle class. So that's how you justify it as a great need. But it also is great for the business world, because there are skill set shortages out there. We can't find workers. This is all well documented. So it's getting people prepared to have a great work life and provide companies with this workforce that is skilled, rather than dealing with people who they would have to work with on their own. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, this is. I mean, in our minds, this is the opportunity of the moment, right? I mean, for us at Siemens, we're incredibly excited about what's happening in the U.S. economy right now, with $1.5 trillion in the next decade being invested. We're bringing manufacturing back to the shores in the U.S. The company announced this week some $500 million of investments in manufacturing facilities here in the U.S., and we're certainly not alone. I mean, the business community has stepped up big, but there is a huge opportunity here to reshore manufacturing. We're rebuilding ports, bridges, rail lines. These things that we've been begging for, literally for generations, have finally arrived, but now we've got a problem that we have to solve for, and we're fully capable of doing that. What we know about, and Steve, I know you know this better than I do, but I mean, the workforce of today tends to be much older, much more male than the workforce of tomorrow. The growth is coming from women and from communities of color. And just like all of our markets, right, that requires knowing, having an expertise and having a different approach to how you recruit and train and involve yourself in society. So all of that is part of the excitement that we have.
So that's advancing workforce training. The second area of priority for you is reducing health disparities. How are you doing that?
Yeah, we're doing that in a couple of really great ways. First of all, you'll hear as we describe these areas that there is kind of a common denominator of workforce development. But before I get into that, in health equity, we work with a couple of really great partners. One is Choose Healthy Life, which is a coalition of Black ministers centered out of New York, but really operating in 8 to 12 states around the U.S. they are providing healthcare, training their congregations to do testing, to do referral, to work with community clinics on healthcare for their congregations and their communities surrounding them. With the National Alliance of Hispanic Health, we're the national sponsor of their 16 health fairs that take place between the spring and the fall. I was just in Brownsville, Texas. They had some 5,000 individuals and families at the zoo. For many of those folks, this is the healthcare that they receive for the year. It's everything from nutritional training to signing up for healthcare, insurance, et cetera. And then back to the workforce development side of things, we have a 3-year large partnership with the Washington Association of Community Health. They have developed a couple of models in the medical assistants and dental assistant apprenticeships that they are scaling out to states across the country. And our grant there is really an acknowledgement of the tremendous leadership they've shown and the tremendous promise they have of taking that model further out and nationally. So again, that workforce development is really at the base of this. And when you think of health equity, it's not just, providing the health care, right, to a community. It's also being able to hire from that community to make sure that folks who look like me, if I'm in a particular community that I can identify with, that are my neighbors, are the same folks filling these jobs. That provides a paycheck into the community, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so that's 2 of them, and your third goal is creating a more sustainable world. I think people understand that and it resonates, but tell us exactly how you're doing that.
Yeah, well, I think that one's going to get to sort of the subject of the hour here for us anyway. This is a launch that we just had in the last 30 or 60 days with a program called Everyone Charging Forward. That is a $30 million 10-year initiative to drive inclusive workforce development in the EV charging sector. So very specific areas there, but we're focused on the manufacturing, maintenance, and installation of electric vehicle chargers. And again, a really narrow remit there, right? But we also had a process that will already start to sound familiar here. We were looking at, where do we have the highest return on investment? That $1.5 trillion opportunity here to drive an economy, to drive sustainability, here in the US and around the world, to drive national security. All of those things are there, and we're excited about that. But we know that there are some 15 million infrastructure jobs coming online over the next 10 years. And at the same time, some 17 million infrastructure related workers who will be moving out of their jobs during that time period. So that issue of there is a problem we have to solve for was key to us. And we sat down and said, well, there's a lot of different places we could stick our toes in here. Where is the place that we think we can have the highest return on investment? And we looked at those jobs. They're sustainable jobs. These are not jobs that are going to be in a community for a year or 2 years and then move down the road. They're there. But we looked at the wages that were being paid. We looked at the cost of entry for workers, and we looked at a couple of regions. We looked at a lot of regions, but we narrowed to the Midwest in Detroit, and we narrowed to the Southeast as 2 places where we saw some really good collaboration happening among business, academia, labor, and others, and really, put our oar in the water there.
We're discussing the Siemens Foundation and their multiple goals to support the community. We're going to take a short break and be right back.
What does the future of work mean for your employees? How will your company navigate ESG? Will there be a global recession? At the Conference Board, our experts translate the latest research and economic analysis into insights and real-time problem solving for your organization. Membership at the Conference Board provides your team with an assortment of knowledge, from economics, marketing and communications, ESG, public policy, and human capital. As a member, you'll have access to our center experts, member-exclusive events, data and benchmarking tools, and peer sharing that will help you understand the present and shape the future. Consider becoming a Conference Board member today by visiting www.conference-board.org.
Welcome back to CEO Perspectives. I'm your host, Steve Odland from the Conference Board, and I'm joined today by David Etzwiler, CEO of the Siemens Foundation. So Dave, right before the break, we were talking about your new Everyone Charging Forward program, and everyone, and the everyone, the first two letters in everyone is EV, which is capitalized, which is very good, very creative. But let's go a little bit deeper into that. So of all the sustainability projects which you could have developed, you focused on EV and about the infrastructure needs behind that. Say again a little bit more about how did you focus in on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the demand side of this was important, right? I mean, a lot of what's happening in the infrastructure bill is starting to unfold now, but we looked immediately at, hey, there's demand now. We know that. We know that it's already affecting the uptake in electric vehicle purchases right now, right? We know that those jobs are readily filled as soon as they're made. We know that they pay good wages. So that was a very obvious set of data for us to take a look at. But we also looked at places like, as I mentioned before the break, Detroit and North Carolina, and saw some exceptional opportunities there in the way that collaborations were coming. And by the way, we really vetted through about 60 or 70 different opportunities with the folks that helped us put this strategy together. But that was the other piece of this, is that we really saw a tremendous opportunity in terms of the timing of things.
So is the program focused strictly on vehicle charging infrastructure?
Yeah, it does. It focuses on the manufacturing, installation, and servicing of electric vehicle chargers. And what I probably haven't emphasized enough is, when we looked at the background and the data here about how we're going to build a workforce in this area, again, the same trends come along, right? I mean, it's the number of electricians that are needed in this country over the next decade or two is astronomical. And when you look at the number of women who are there, it's something in the neighborhood of 3 or 4% of electricians are women, right? So again, just as a business strategy, right? How do we make sure that we're including everybody in this workforce? Communities of color, rural communities, all of those are opportunities for us to do better as employers and educators.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you've blended the three goals together, because you've got workforce training, reduction of health disparities, and then sustainability. But they're all really workforce training. It's developing workforces that can deal with these issues. So you're not just saying, well, let's give money to to help with one person. You're really, they say if you give a person a fish, they eat for a night. If you teach them to fish, they eat for a lifetime. You're teaching people to fish, meaning you're giving them the skill sets to engage in all three of these areas in order to be productive individuals, in order for their lives to be improved, in order for companies to be able to deal with these, and then to these goals, and then for the nation to meet its national goals all at the same time. So these are all interrelated themes.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's that, I mean, the win-win statement is probably too often used, but the fact of the matter is and I'm about to repeat what you just said. These are sustainable jobs. They pay well. They get folks to the middle class, right? Without debt. That's a huge win. The environmental issue is here. We know we have to solve for that. And this drives that forward. It opens up a bottleneck to moving us to electric vehicles in a more sustainable future. It moves us forward from an economic standpoint, right? If we're going to enjoy these jobs and this economic prosperity as a business community, as a society writ large, then we've got to solve for this problem. And even go back to the national security issue. I mean, we're bringing chip manufacturing back here. And this all, obviously, we're in the electric vehicle sector right now, but this all feeds into, I think, what we have to continue to do better as a business community.
Yeah, and you're trying to deal with some of these key trends facing the U.S. workforce. And so you might want to just talk more about that, because, the Conference Board has written extensively about skills shortages and gaps, but, clearly your programs go right at the heart of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the trends are really what's driving it for us, right? And that was a lot of the conversation that we had, and the data that we looked at was this, and this is not a woke statement, right? This is one of the beauties of having an approach that's a disciplined approach to problem solving. But the fact of the matter is, right, the growth in the labor market is slowing when it comes to white males and older white males. And so you have to look at your practices as a society, as an employer, as an academician, and ask yourself, here's a different market. How do I appeal to a different market? How do I make sure that women understand these jobs are out here, that what the value of them is? How do I think through how childcare or transportation might have to be better developed in the case of those training models? How do I think of communities of color and how they perceive or don't perceive the, access to these jobs? And fortunately, we have landed on some partners here who are doing a tremendous job, have a track record over time of doing that extremely well. So that's certainly, one of the big trends there. And the other big trend here is workers have more power, right? In the midst of all of this, workers and unions have more power. And so as we're moving forward, we understand that, getting folks involved in these training models also means helping them understand what the opportunities are, what the long-term possibilities in all of those are. And that's part of the equation as well.
Yeah, but you go back to Siemens and what the company does. You're in the foundation, but what the company does, it's all about industrial automation. It's about building technology, energy technology, medical technology. So not only is Siemens through the foundation trying to deal with the needs of the community, one of its many constituents, but it's also trying to leverage its own capabilities and skill sets, within their lines of business to do this. So it's really a bundled strategy here through the foundation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that I have been in corporate philanthropy for most of my career, and have been in leadership positions both in the corporation and in different fields, including with the conference board at various times. And that's the really fun piece of this, right? The strategy that aligns in the appropriate ways, right? The reputation, brand within specific communities, right? And you named them at the beginning. You named some of them at the beginning, right? But building that brand and leveraging the heck out of the assets that you have around you, and it's a beautiful thing when you get to a board table and you've come together as a board and there's an appropriate strategy and you're serving society, and there's that lift of, hey, here's who we are in terms of our values and what's meaningful to us.
So as you think about this, and you have been in philanthropy forever, how would you advise other senior leadership teams, CEOs, boards to look at their own company and their own set of capabilities and assets and develop their own strategy? How do you do that? How should they think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it at the beginning. I mean, I really do think it's one of the great things that we do here in the US that isn't mimicked in most other cultures. There's an expectation now that you're going to leverage your assets and your knowledge base and your passion here to drive change in society, right? Like maybe 25 years ago, you're supposed to go the opposite direction, that it was kind of, it looked like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Now we have very clear lines about obviously what is appropriate under IRS guidelines, but more appropriately, even back from that, what's appropriate from a values and moral side. But once you find that area of overlap, the highest return on investment, using your assets as a company, your passions, knowing who your constituencies are, and working through that as a board. And by the way, it doesn't take forever. I mean, it's like any other strategic planning phase. If you stretch it out, you're going to kill it. But if you can be thoughtful and move quickly, that's huge. And there's tremendous opportunities here in corporate philanthropy to do that.
Yeah, so it seems to me that, you didn't take us through chapter and verse on this thing, but you started with, hey, the community is an important constituent. We need to take care of the community. We need to leverage our skill sets. What are our skill sets? What lines of business are we in? Where do we want to focus that's consistent with those lines of business and our skill sets, and taking care of the community? You settled on 3 areas and boom, you're off and running. And it seems to me that that's just a very common sense, simple template and an approach for almost any organization who obviously need to involve themselves in their communities. It's just expected now that corporate America, the capitalism is about in being sustainable. It's about engagement in a multi-constituency model. So it seems like this is a classic case of how to approach it that others could leverage.
Yeah, I hope so, and it's certainly part of what we've captured. A number of years ago, I and a colleague from IBM led the Future of Corporate Philanthropy initiative with a team of leaders from around the country. But that model that we used at Medtronic, we brought forward here at Siemens, has really worked out well for a lot of folks. And what you're describing, what we're talking about here, is just so important when you get into your brand and reputation at various levels, right? It's the communities around your business units. It's the expectation of the mayors and the governors in the states and cities in which you do business and drive your business lines. It's the conversations that you have with representatives. And again, it's not why you do that, but it's an opportunity to say, we share values, we share work, here's what we're doing to do our share. And that pays, huge dividends in terms of reputation and brand. Again, it's not why you do it. If you do it for that reason, you're going to miss it. But that authentic engagement glues together a lot of relationships.
Yeah, these are great words of wisdom, and I think a model that other companies could follow. David Etzwiler, CEO of the Siemens Foundation, thanks for being with us today.
Steve, great to be with you. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for listening in to CEO Perspectives. Every week I'll be joined by a prominent thought leader to provide insights on the issues of our time. We'll cover leading topics in economics, public policy, ESG, and more. Please share CEO Perspectives with your colleagues, with your friends, with everybody who cares about their communities. I'm Steve Odland, and this series has been brought to you by the Conference Board.
You have been listening to CEO Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.